We live in a culture that equates masculinity with dominance, silence, and invulnerability. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Real strength isn't about being untouchable. It's about being accountable. We've all heard it. Maybe we've even said it ourselves. That's just how I am. It sounds harmless, even honest, but let's call it what it really is: a wall, a defense mechanism dressed up as self-awareness, a sentence we use to shut down conversations that ask us to grow. Because when we say that's just how I am, what we're actually saying is, don't ask me to reflect. Don't challenge me to be better. Don't expect me to change because I've decided I don't have to. It's not a declaration of identity, it's a declaration of surrender. It's giving up the responsibility of becoming and instead clinging to the comfort of who we've always been, even if who we've always been is hurting the people around us. But here's the truth that takes real courage to face. We are not born emotionally shut down. We are not hardwired to be reactive, dismissive, cold, aggressive, manipulative, or avoidant. Those are patterns, coping strategies, survival mechanisms we picked up along the way to feel safe in a world that told us vulnerability was dangerous. And guess what? Patterns can be unlearned. That's just how I am often comes from a man who was never taught that evolution is possible, that healing is a choice, that self-awareness is a muscle, that change is a form of love, not weakness. So instead of saying, that's just how I am, ask, is this who I want to be? Is this belief still serving me, or is it just familiar? Am I hiding behind who I've been because I'm afraid of who I could become? We don't get to use our past as an excuse to avoid accountability. Yes, your story matters, your trauma matters, the way you were shaped by life, it all matters, but none of it gives you a free pass to opt out of your own growth. Men who are truly strong aren't the ones who double down on dysfunction. They're the ones who face it with humility, with honesty, and with a willingness to transform. Just how I am might be where you started. Doesn't have to be where you stay. It's a phrase that cuts deeper than most insults because it doesn't just question someone's feelings, it invalidates their right to feel at all. Let's get one thing straight. Telling someone they're too sensitive isn't feedback. It's dismissal, it's a defense mechanism, it's an emotionally lazy way of saying, your feelings are uncomfortable for me, so I'm going to make them your problem. It's not strength, it's avoidance. When a man says this, especially in relationships, especially during conflict, it almost always comes from one of two places: fear or discomfort. Fear of being held accountable, discomfort with being asked to face something he'd rather ignore. But let's look at what's really happening underneath. When someone expresses hurt, disappointment, or even just vulnerability, it takes courage. And when we respond with, you're too sensitive, we shut that courage down. We teach people to doubt themselves, to quiet their truth, to carry their pain silently so we don't have to witness it. And often the person who says it, he's not actually strong enough yet to sit with someone else's emotion without feeling personally attacked. He hasn't yet learned that holding space for another person's truth doesn't mean surrendering his own. It just means listening without trying to control the narrative. And here's where it gets real. Calling someone too sensitive often reveals just how emotionally underdeveloped the speaker really is. Sensitivity is not weakness. Sensitivity is not fragility. Sensitivity is awareness, it's attunement, it's the ability to feel the nuances of life and relationships with depth and care. The truth is, we need more sensitivity in this world, not less. We need men who are emotionally literate, who can recognize and honor the impact of their words, who understand that their tone carries weight, their silences have meaning, and their actions echo far beyond the moment. Telling someone they're too sensitive is like breaking a glass and blaming the floor for being hard. It shifts blame, it denies reality, it protects ego at the cost of connection. If you've said this before, and many of us have, pause and ask yourself, what was I trying to avoid? Why did their emotion feel threatening to me? What would it look like to respond with curiosity instead of criticism? Because the truth is, when someone shares their pain with us, they're not being weak. They're offering us an invitation to see them, to understand them, to meet them in a place of truth. And how we respond tells them everything about who we really are. If we want to be strong men, truly strong, we have to stop using shame to silence softness. But let's stop telling people they feel too much and start asking ourselves why we feel so little. It's one of the most damaging lies we've ever told our boys. And it's not just a lie, it's a cage. It's a message hammered into us from the time we can walk. Don't cry, don't feel, don't be soft, and if you do, do it quietly, privately, behind locked doors, because God forbid someone sees the cracks in your armor. But here's what no one tells you. That armor, it becomes a prison. We convince men that tears are a weakness, that emotion is a threat to masculinity, that grief, tenderness, hurt, fear, these are feelings for women, for children, for lesser men. And so what happens? We raise men who don't know how to grieve. We raise men who rage instead of cry. We raise men who bury everything they can't explain and then watch it come out sideways in addiction, in anger, in silence, in self-destruction. Men who were never taught how to cry end up bleeding emotionally on the people who love them most. And the tragedy is they think they're being strong. They think holding it in is noble, stoic, manly. But the strongest men I've ever met, the ones who lead with integrity, who show up with full hearts, who carry others when they're falling apart, those men cry, and not because they're broken, because they're brave enough to feel. Because tears don't make you weak, pretending nothing hurts, that does. Here's the truth, real men cry. Real men mourn the losses they've been told to man up through. Real men cry at the birth of their children, at the loss of their fathers, at the ending of a relationship, or the weight of a mistake. Real men cry because their hearts are open, not because they've failed at being tough. And those tears, they cleanse, they free, they heal. They give permission to others, sons, brothers, friends, to stop pretending and start living. So to every man who's ever swallowed his emotion like poison to prove a point, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to grit your teeth through heartbreak. You don't have to toughen up your way through grief. You don't have to be a statue when life knocks you to your knees. Your softness is not your failure. It is your humanity. We don't need men who can fake indifference. We need men who can feel deeply and still keep moving forward. Not despite their tears, but with them. Because sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is cry, but look a little closer. And it's not strength, it's stagnation. It's fear disguised as certainty, and it's often the loudest voice of the man who is terrified of being wrong. Because if you already know everything you need to know, guess what that means? You don't have to listen. You don't have to learn. You don't have to grow. This phrase is a closed door. It shuts out conversation. It shuts out reflection. And worst of all, it shuts out humility. When a man says this, what he's really doing is protecting his ego at all costs. He's drawing a line around himself saying, this is all I'll ever be, and I'm not open to becoming anything more. And that might feel powerful in the moment, but over time, it's a slow death of potential. Let's be real. Men who claim to know everything they need to know are usually afraid of being exposed, afraid of feeling inadequate. So they create this illusion of certainty. They live in absolutes. They stop asking questions. They mistake arrogance for leadership. And it isolates them. It keeps them stuck in outdated ideas. It damages relationships because you can't truly connect with someone when you're always trying to prove you're the smartest person in the room. And it robs them of growth because growth requires admitting that there's always more to understand. The strongest men aren't the ones who have all the answers. They're the ones who stay curious, who ask questions even when they're afraid of the answers, who understand that knowledge isn't a destination, it's a lifelong pursuit. They don't cling to being right, they cling to being real. Because real growth, it's uncomfortable. It requires unlearning. It requires owning your blind spots, your biases, your conditioning. It requires saying, maybe I got this wrong. Maybe there's more for me to learn. And let's be honest, how many relationships, friendships, opportunities, and inner peace have been lost simply because someone refused to be teachable? Saying, I know everything I need to know might feel like power, but in the end, it's limitation. Dangerous place a man can live is in the belief that he's done learning. So if you've said this before, here's the invitation. Trade your need to be right for the courage to be open. Because you don't have to know everything. You just have to be brave enough to keep learning. First glance, it sounds like a principle, a code, something a man might say with a straight back and a firm tone, believing he is upholding a standard. But what it really is a mask for fear, a mask for ego, a mask for entitlement and superiority. Let's be honest about what this phrase really does. It justifies disrespect. It normalizes power imbalances. And it reveals more about the man who says it than the woman it's aimed at. Because when a man says respect is earned, not given, especially to women, he is almost always trying to avoid accountability. He's using the concept of earned respect as a weapon, treating dignity like it's a prize instead of a birthright. But here's the truth. Respect is not a reward, it's a reflection of your character. You don't respect people because they performed for you. You respect people because you've decided that who you are doesn't change based on who they are. When you withhold basic respect, especially from women, because they haven't met your criteria, what you're really saying is, I only see value in people when they benefit me, agree with me, or serve me. That's not strength. That's control. That's not standards. That's supremacy. That's not leadership. That's insecurity performing as pride. Let's talk about the double standard here too. You rarely hear this phrase aimed at men. It's rarely, he has to earn my respect. So men often extend default respect to each other even in conflict. But when it comes to women, suddenly the bar is higher. Suddenly she has to prove herself, submit, stay quiet, earn her place. That's not respect, that's conditioning. That's patriarchy. That's fear of losing power disguised as principle. So here's the reframe. Respecting someone doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean you like them. It doesn't mean you trust them with your life. It simply means you recognize their humanity and treat them accordingly. And if a man's default is to withhold respect from half the population based on gender, that's not about standards, that's about superiority. The strongest men I know respect women because they respect themselves. They don't need a woman to earn her dignity. They don't need agreement to offer kindness. They don't need submission to offer decency because their respect isn't a currency they trade. It's a reflection of the integrity they live by. So if you've ever said respect is earned, not given, especially to women, pause and ask, what am I protecting by withholding respect? What am I afraid to lose if I offer dignity freely? Is this about her worth or my insecurity? The world doesn't need more men who are willing to judge. We need more men who are willing to unlearn Because when we begin offering respect without conditions, we create space for equity, trust, and real leadership, not just power plays in the name of standards. And that's the kind of manhood worth earning. It sounds bold, doesn't it? Fearless, free, like the words of a man who walks through life untouched by judgment, immune to opinion, bulletproof in his truth. But if you look closely, if you really listen to the tone behind it, it's rarely freedom speaking. Most of the time, it's pain in disguise. It's not a declaration of independence. It's a defense mechanism, a wall built not from confidence, but from wounds, from betrayal, from criticism, from years of not feeling seen, respected, or understood. So we learn to shut it all down. We pretend we don't care. We train ourselves to go numb, and we wear that numbness like armor, calling it strength. But here's what no one tells you. You were never meant to stop caring, because not caring what people think isn't strength. It's disconnection. It's not courage, it's avoidance. Caring what people think is human. It's how we form bonds. It's how we grow. It's how we know we belong somewhere, that our presence has impact, that we matter. But here's the catch. Caring what people think isn't the problem. The problem is needing their approval to validate your worth. The problem is living for their applause instead of listening to your own inner compass. There's a difference between being a prisoner to people's opinions and being aware of how your presence affects the room. One is codependence. The other is emotional intelligence. Men who walk around shouting, "I don't care what people think," are often just trying to hide the fact that they've been hurt too many times to risk vulnerability again. They're tired of being misunderstood. They're tired of being judged. So they decide it's safer to stop caring altogether. But that's not strength, that's trauma. And the cost of that mindset, it's steep. You stop listening, you stop connecting, you stop being teachable, you stop being emotionally available to the people who need your care. And here's the hard truth, a man who truly doesn't care what people think can't be a good partner or a good leader or a good friend, because caring is part of relationship. It's how we build trust, it's how we build anything that lasts. So instead of, "I don't care what people think," what if we said, "I care what people think, but I don't let it control me. I'm open to feedback, but not defined by it. I value connection, but not at the cost of my integrity." That's real strength. The goal isn't to go numb, it's to be discerning, to care where it matters, to listen when it's wise, to stand tall even when you're misunderstood, not because you don't care, but because you know who you are. That's the kind of strength we need more of. Not men who hide behind apathy, but men who care deeply and live freely anyway. We've been handed a script, one that told us that strength means silence, that confidence means never questioning ourselves, that masculinity means power at all costs. And we followed it. We armored up, we shut down. We repeated these 6 phrases like mantras. That's just how I am. You're too sensitive. Real men don't cry. I know everything I need to know. Respect is earned, not given, especially to women. I don't care what people think. But here's the truth. Every single one of these phrases reveals not strength, but fear. Fear of being challenged. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of being seen. Fear of losing control. And real strength, the kind that builds trust, intimacy, leadership, legacy, doesn't come from being unbreakable. It comes from being real, from being able to say, "I'm still learning. That hurt me. I want to understand. I care. I was wrong. I can grow." True masculinity isn't built on bravado. It's built on courage. Courage to show up honestly. Courage to own your impact. Courage to choose empathy over ego. So if you've used these phrases before, you're not broken, you're human, but now you have a choice to keep repeating the story that shrinks you, or to write a new one that expands you. Because the world doesn't need more men who act tough. It needs more men who are brave enough to be tender, bold enough to evolve, and strong enough to lead with heart. Let's retire the old scripts. Let's stop mistaking control for power. Let's stop calling emotional numbness strength. And let's start creating a version of manhood that's rooted in truth, wholeness, and connection. That's how we rise. Would you like me to now write the description, timestamps, or hashtags for this video or speech